Currently, Central Park, 27 degrees, west wind gusting to 18.
Really?
Factor at
Goodness.
12 above, humidity 46%, and it is sunny. WNYC
So I said enough
AM
of this
820,
shit,
New York Public Radio, 1206.
Lennie, do you need your headsets on? Hi, I'm Robert McNeil of the McNeil Era News Hour.
that's the only
You're
one.
listening to New York and Company with Leonard Lopez on WNYC, New York Public Radio.
The liberal conspiracy here. You think Robert McNeil is a liberal?
No.
Oh, okay.
I think he's sort of, you know, a broadcaster,
Slightly
kind
right
of
of center, I think, but, yeah.
something. Well, around the center,
Yeah.
certainly. We could quibble over.
My guest on New York and Company is Richard Brookhiser, who is a senior editor at the National Review, writes a column for the New York Observer as well, can be seen all over the TV dial these days.
Well, I guess.
Official conservative for any talk show.
And I guess more. I mean, we're being filmed right now. Should I not say that?
Make faces.
It's become a visual. Can I put little horns behind your head and stuff? Come on, this is supposed to be fun. Okay.
You have in the past. In fact, I've seen you on Charlie Rose. I've seen you on a lot of different shows.
I have to tell you,
official conservative.
No.
For the pundit shows.
No. But I have to tell you a funny story about the last time I was on Charlie Rose, which was for the State of the Union, and so we were told, you know, it's going to begin such and such a time, and come over and watch it in the green room, and then we'll do the segment afterwards. So we went over, and we were sitting there watching. We'd been told that Clinton was going to speak 35 minutes. This is what the White House was saying that day. So after about a half an hour, I thought, this is okay, Clinton, and now he'll start to wrap it up, and we'll have done a pretty good job. And then a techie comes in and says, we just got a call from Washington. It's a 14-page speech, and he's on page 8. So and then this became relevant because the Charlie Rose show only has use of its satellite up till 10:30. So we had to go and do the segment. So we were there talking about the speech, which was still going on, and we talked for about 20 minutes or half an hour. And then when we were done, we filed back through the green room, and he was still talking. So that's when I knew that something awesome rhetorically had occurred.
Well, it's lucky there are so many pundits who have to comment on the State of the Union address. Otherwise, there probably wouldn't have been that many people watching at the end.
Well, you know, I heard the best explanation I heard was from a friend of mine, or a very interesting explanation, which is that the State of the Union is an occasion when all your enemies, your political enemies, have to sit there and applaud you. You know, unless they want to look like real jerks. They have to sit there and they have to applaud. And I think there is something psychologically for every president, but particularly for this one in this moment where he must feel sort of beleaguered and, you know, what's happening to me, where he was going to stretch that out.
Yeah, but there's the other side, which is here's a beleaguered president who really needs to do everything possible to recreate his image in the American public's eyes. And he doesn't do it with a brilliant, moving State of the Union address at all.
Well, no, I mean, this, you know, what I was saying was an unconscious motivation. I mean, and obviously, if he were aware that that's what he was doing, he wouldn't be doing it.
It would be the speech of my life.
Well, you know, he had, I just don't know. Someone said to me, aren't there people in the White House, you know, who tell him you have to talk 40 minutes or whatever it is? And I said, well, sure there are, but he's the president. You know, so they can't compel him to, and he will just do what he will do.
Right before we went on, it was announced that Dan Quayle is not going to run. Your favorite candidate for a long time, Jack Kemp, has announced he's not going to run. And we were starting to talk about we were throwing out names of who might run other than Bob Dole, and I said Newt Gingrich, and you said no way.
No, you know, and you said that, and Bill Sapphire has been saying that a couple of times. I just don't see it.
Why do you have to give up too much power?
Well, he would have to give up power that he has been focused on entirely for at least 10 years. Now, he will say that he first thought about being Speaker when he went to Verdun when he was 15. You know, that's probably embroidering it. But the fact is, certainly for 10 years, and probably longer, this guy has been thinking about being Speaker of the House, and everything he's done has has been to that end, and all his harrying and of Tip O'Neill and Jim Wright and all these people, and this was all this has been his life, and I just don't think you can suddenly say with the New Hampshire primary a little more than a year away, just suddenly switch everything.
Now, the contract with America was a brilliant PR ploy as far as I was concerned. But now that we're starting to see it enacted, it's looking worse and worse. It looks like a bit of a fraud to me. For example, term limits.
Right.
Term limits for everybody but us. We have...
Oh, they will get screwed on that one. They should have known that. I think I'm like the one conservative who hasn't been for term limits. No, there's another one. A friend of mine, Charles Kessler, he's a professor on the West Coast. We're like the two. And I always thought, we have them. They're called elections, and every 2 years, everyone in Congress must leave. They must go. I mean, they can't hide in a closet, and then come out in February and reassume their old desk. They have to get out of there, and the only way they can come back is if they get reelected. We have them already. And so I always thought there was something, I don't know, bogus about this. And particularly now, this thing about that there will be term limits except for those who are now there. I suppose they can say that the precedent is with the amendment that limits presidential terms, because when that was passed, an exception was made for the incumbent, who was Harry Truman. Now, of course, at that time, no one would have thought, he was quite unpopular, and the fact that he got elected in '48 was a great surprise. But so maybe the Republicans, people have called that a posthumous bill of attainder against Franklin Roosevelt. They couldn't do it to him when he was alive, but when he was in his grave, they all sort of did this to his memory. So they can say that's a precedent, but I don't think that cuts any ice. I think people will say, "Oh, come on, you're just like all the rest of them," and and so on. And so
in a way, they shot themselves in the foot.
They did. And
Eisenhower might have won a third term. I don't know if he would have. Reagan would have had a chance as well.
I think what they should do, if they're going to go ahead with this, which they have to do now, I mean, they've committed themselves to it and they have to do it, whatever the amendment reads, the Republicans in the Congress should take a pledge, that they themselves will step aside.
Another one is the line item veto. Now,
that's a great idea. That is a great idea.
The idea may be good or it may not be good, but look at the act. It's very limited. It does not apply to all special bills, only to those that involve organizations of 100 employees or less. In other words, what we're really talking about is the major corporations can get all they want and the president can't do a thing about it, but something with 100 or less, which is likely to be a competitor to the big corporations, or a museum or something, they're the ones the president can veto.
You mean a law that pertains to such an organization?
Well, the line item veto is very limited in what it allows.
Well, that's a shame, but you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere.
They started with the way, I guess, Republicans would start. Let's protect our big, rich friends, and we'll screw the little guys.
Well, now look, Democrats have been known to protect big, rich friends, too. I mean, I remember,
when Tom Daschle protects his
Gary Hart and Manville, the asbestos company, and all that kind of stuff. But, well, no, that is a shame, and they should make it across the board. But I think, well, no, it's not too late now, because there's always next year, and you can always reintroduce a tougher one.
There's another one, the proposal to eliminate the dollar bill and replace it with a coin. Who benefits here? Well, mining interests, and who suffers? Well, most of the world that uses.
Now that's not in the
bills,
contract, Leonard, is it?
Yeah, it's been added to the contract.
Well, added to the contract. All right.
It's going through as one of the contract proposals. In fact, it's before Congress now.
Well, you're all right. I have a point of view, but it's a very peculiar one because I am a coin collector, and so I don't like this kind of tampering. I think doesn't it also involve stopping penny production? I think that's the deal. We get a dollar and we stop making pennies, and copper producers are not concerned about pennies because they have virtually no copper in them anymore. I think it's literally none. I think they're dipped in copper to make them look brown, but they're really aluminum. So, and I think it would be a great shame to lose the penny. What I would rather see done is remonetization. I think we should change the value of everything by a factor of 10. You know, if
Like
we
France,
think,
we have
yeah,
the new
like
dollar.
France, exactly, have a new dollar. If we think pennies are worthless, let's just do that. So the penny will be an equivalent to a dime, and so on down the road. And then what we might be able to do is reintroduce silver into our coins and make them like real coins again, instead of these cheesy looking, foreign looking
And
like
even-
things
even
that they
then-
now are.
And even then, who really benefits from that? The miners, the mining corporations, because paper. I mean, the paper bill is a lot less expensive to put out there, and a lot less destructive to the environment. We don't have strip mining. We don't have the cleanups that result from all the several
Well,
things
but don't
we've
we have trees? I mean, I'm sure the supporters of a dollar coin could come back with
You can
counter arguments to
you
that.
can recycle the pulp in a dollar bill, but you can't well, anyway.
I don't know. I don't know if they would do that for counterfeiting reasons. I mean, there may be anti-counterfeiting reasons which would argue against recycling the pulp in currency. That's something I just don't know.
I always wondered why we don't have that little dark strip in our bills, what they do in Europe.
We do.
We do
In the
now.
$20 bill, yes. You tear a $20 bill, you can pull a little magnetic strip out of it.
Some people are suggesting that the Republicans...
See, you learn things.
Yeah.
You learn
We
things
all learn
here.
stuff. Some people are suggesting that the Republicans are not really ready for power, that they still have the mentality of the party out of power, and that's why we're seeing certain mean-spirited things like the Barney Fag slip, if we can call it a slip, of Dick Armey, and some of the upset that Newt Gingrich has expressed over being looked at under the same kind of microscope that he applied to his predecessors.
Now, I have to say, all right, you got me started on Barney Frank. And I have to say, we are not talking about... Now, first of all, I think it was a slip. I think Armey is deceiving us and probably himself when he says it was simply a tangle of the tongue. You know, that he might have said Barney Skank or something, as well as or as Barney. Have you ever heard Armey, by the way? Armey is incomprehensible when he's saying the words he intends to say. Okay, so I
Good that he's in
think,
leadership.
but I do think that Armey made a slip. I think his apology was instantaneous. I think it was very telling. It was very telling when he wrote his letter to the Times and he said that he had not called for Frank to step down when Frank had his scandal a few years ago. You remember that. Now, but this, however, is relevant to why Armey would make such a slip. We are not talking about your average gay congressman or your average gay man in Barney Frank. We're not talking about a man who desires men or who lives with another man or who even goes to Splash, and doesn't make a thing about it. We're talking about a guy who was so besotted that he let his lover, who was an ex-prostitute, run an escort service out of his house. I mean, we were talking about a homosexual equivalent of Gary Hart, okay? And so people they're just gonna make jokes. It will come up. People will think of it.
We mean call him Barney Fag within a little clique. I could be very upset about Barney Frank's activities in that one regard, although that was not what was being discussed by Dick Armey at the time.
No, this
But
was
I
years
never
later.
would call him Barney Fag, and neither would my friends. We might call him also,
Well, I don't know. Look, there are things that
only homophobes use that.
No. I have to disagree, Leonard, because there are things
Dennis
that...
Bacco would probably
No,
laugh
wait a
lot
second.
at that joke.
There are things that I would never say in public. That I would never say in public, that I would never say, to people, jokes that I would never tell. And yet there are things that one laughs at, because humor, after all, is aggression. Humor is about sublimated aggression. We've known that since Bergson, and it's about, it's like a steam valve. It's like a way of doing it without actually doing it. Bergson compared it to barking.
Somebody calls Barney Frank Barney Fag. You find that you laugh?
No, I don't find that funny. But if it were the punchline, if it were a punchline, I could imagine jokes of which that would be the punchline. I could imagine that there could be a joke that would be the punchline to, that might be funny. I have laughed at jokes with punchlines far more grotesque and disgusting than that offend all kinds of sensibilities. And I would never tell them here.
Appreciate it.
Well, all right. Of course I wouldn't do it. And I would never tell them on a firing line, and I would never write them in National Review or the New York Observer or any place, because there are certain things you don't do. But the fact,
politically correct,
but
Richard Brookhiser.
well, yes, we all are.
Just like the Rutgers president.
Look, the argument about
say, even if you think